they're calling, but I want to set this up properly. We've got Charlotte Iserbyt coming on, number 2, Department of Education, head of policy, Department of Education under Reagan. Her dad was Skull and Bones, Bohemian Grove, Eastern Establishment. She's quite accomplished herself in the Foreign Service and then coming back to here in the U.S. She went there and was at the highest levels and found out there was a plan to dumb everybody down, to break up the family. The family was the enemy. She's got quotes coming up to go over this because a ne'er-do-well on YouTube, a little trendy know-it-all, the guy says he's 33 and he looks like a little girl. I mean, just totally, and I'm not trying to say people that don't look old when they're 33 are weak, but I mean, he just looks like a child. Up there with his little beard, trying to look like a big man, with his costume, festooning his cheeks, saying, I believe in space aliens and Bush is space aliens, and totally made up. And then he goes into saying, I never back up with any quotes or books or documents. I just saw this last night, and so we're going to put an article together on Jones Report the next few days with dozens of these quotes and documents. And we're going to disprove this guy. But I got Bob on the phone. He dug out one of the books. There's another textbook his son had. But his son's now a police officer and off. And I can't. This is 5 years ago. I'm going from memory here, but Bob does have the actual quotes and footnoted. Bob, thanks for holding.
Hey, thank you for having me on, Alex. I heard you talking about me at the beginning of the show, and that was really old. That was a long time ago, so I thought I would scratch my memory. And I think the quote you're looking for was from a book called None Dare Call It Education. My son's book was called Comparative Criminal Justice, that when he was a student at Sam Houston State University.
And let's get into that in a minute. One time you also brought me an ACC book, and you probably don't remember that, but we'll flesh that out in the time to come. But for those just now joining us, again, this is footnoted in the book. Give people the quote.
Okay, this is in a book called None Dare Call It Education by John Stormer. It's out there. It's readily available. And in the book, he quotes a meeting, this has to do with UNESCO, the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, which is trying to dumb down the students of the United States of America. And it's talking about a meeting that was held in Denver in 1973 called the Childhood International Education Seminar. And at that seminar, in 1973, a Chester M. Pierce, M.D., who was a professor of education and psychiatry at Harvard University, told educators at the meeting, quote, now here it is, ladies and gentlemen, this is a quote, Chester M. Pierce, M.D., every child in America entering school at the age of 5 is mentally ill because he comes to school with certain allegiances to our founding fathers, toward our elected officials, toward his parents, toward a belief in a supernatural being, and toward the sovereignty of this nation as a separate entity. It's up to you as teachers to make all these sick children well by creating the international child of the future.
Now, Iserbyt actually has that from federal documents, and we had that one, Bob. No, it was an ACC textbook. You brought me photocopies of it. I showed it on television, where they say something similar, but they say it's a bygone, prehistoric thing. It's a disease. But there's so many quotes. So stay there.
Strange days have found.
Yeah, this guy on YouTube that was attacking me, he shows us who he really is, because first he says, I believe that space aliens run things and George Bush is a space alien. Never said that. Never. I don't talk about UFOs on this show. Talk about documents, bills, legislation. And then he goes on to say, well, of course we need police and social workers watching over the kids looking for pre-crime. Again, guilty until proven innocent, a surveillance grid. He doesn't even see these spies everywhere. And here in Austin, it's in Road to Tyranny, they hand out little credit cards of $200 per family member they turn in. It's on the local news. They run TV ads saying, kids, turn your parents in, what's in their medicine cabinet. He thinks all this is not normal, but that shows how they've grown up in it. And they're the good. You can tell he's on this little power trip. They're the social workers. They're going to decide. They're going to. You go get a degree and you get to run everybody's life and have your way with people. I've been there when the social workers are taking newborn babies from poor families with no criminal record just because they're too ignorant and poor and on welfare because the baby's blonde-haired, blue-eyed, and they can get $300,000 for it. I've been there and I've cried my guts out. I've opened the door and seen the cops choking a woman into signing the baby over. I've seen hell. And I've seen them get on TV and say it's the law, you got to take shots through the health department. When there's no law, you got to take vaccines. And these punks will get up there and say there is a law. Bob, go ahead.
I think what the book my son had as part of his requirements is, learning how to be a cop down at Sam Houston. This book was teaching was dumbing down the cops, Alex. What they were doing is they were teaching future cops of America that our criminal justice system needs to be gotten rid of, and we need to look at other countries like China and whatnot to figure out how to do things. I mean, this book was to dumb down the cops and attack the American jury system.
I remember it said juries were bad. Do you have those quotes?
Yeah.
Oh, let's go over those, too.
Yeah, basically, this is a compendium of writings of these pseudo-intellectuals in the field of criminal justice, and under a topic called Criticism of the Anglo-American Trial Jury, they quote a fellow by the name of an extreme critic of it called Jerome Frank, who labeled the jury as the worst possible enemy of the ideal of supremacy of law. And he says there is ample evidence that respected legal analysts and researchers have grave doubts about the Anglo-American trial jury. And one of the things that they really criticize them on is this: jurors deliberately do not apply the law as instructed, and that they instead choose to ignore the existing law in order to reach a desired decision in the case. In other words, they are attacking jury nullification, which of course is one of the foundations of our country. So because of jury nullification and other things, they want to get rid of it. And they say, you can't responsibly get rid of the jury unless, of course, you study other methods of trial which could achieve the same basic results. And then this book goes into a whole bunch of, they study the jurisprudence systems of communist China and places like that as alternatives to what we have today.
And I remember you brought photos on the show of the big cases when you go in the big law enforcement center, and it's all Chinese badges and how great it is.
What that was in the lobby of the George Beto Criminal Justice building at Sam Houston State University, which is, of course, a premier law enforcement university in the United States.
Now, you talked to your son. I've seen him out at a few rallies over the last few years. He's now down in Houston. Is he saying the other cops are waking up to what's going on right now?
I haven't talked to him about that. He's in a pretty good department down in Pearland. They actually do cop work down there, and the people like them because they actually do police work. So he's not in a politicized environment down there. He's in a traditional cop environment, and I'm glad he is.
He's in Mayberry, huh?
Yeah, he's not like up here in Austin where you can't even defend yourself, or your police chief will get you fired. Things like that. But the medals he was talking about, and he took photographs of that I had seen, were communist Chinese police medals and Soviet Union police medals on display in the lobby of the.
And it says this is good. This is stay there, Bob. I did find some more quotes. I want you to recap that other quote, and I really appreciate everybody that's in the PrisonPlanet.com forum. Go to the PrisonPlanet.com forum and go halfway down. It says. Well, there's a link there. Let me go back to the actual link. At the top of it, it says, when you find Social Work 101, Family is a Disease System, posted here. This has only been going about an hour and a half. And I've read over a bunch of quotes and things that I hadn't seen that back up what we're saying. But I did find one that I do remember reading, because listeners mail me these books, and we have a lot of professors and scholars and researchers that listen to the show. And it says, Sociology, a Brief Introduction. And by the way, just during the break, I Googled this and found the opening introduction online, because Amazon does that, and did indeed find it, because I'm not just going to read this unless I can go prove it myself. But this is, and I've seen this before, now this is on page 285, discusses the approach to family of conflict theorists. Conflict theorists also view the family as an economic unit that contributes to social injustice. The family is the basis for transferring power, property, and privilege from one generation to the next. Conflict theorists argue that the family helps to maintain inequity. So see, the family is bad. This is over and over again. Now, we haven't found the one textbook, because it's 5-6 years ago. And maybe it was the same night I covered things with Bob. A lot of these are already on the web. Maybe you can find it, listeners. It's the same night I covered it with Bob. Might have been right around the same time. And maybe that's why my memory says it was from Bob, because I got a textbook There were photocopies. I had to give it back. It was Calhoun Social Work Reader, something like that. Find it. Now, we can disprove that I don't talk about space aliens, as this guy says. We can disprove that the government isn't at odds with the family. That's well known. All readers in sociology. God, it all sounds familiar. It goes on social theory and politics of identity, nationalism, concepts and social thought. I think it's the one that's Blackwell readers. And I want to say it's a Calhoun reader. Maybe like a condensed version, but it was a pretty good-sized book. Bob Dacey, thank you for the incredible job.